If I could just take something that actually, I take when my afternoon energy is running a little low, there is a product that Jerry Seinfeld does a great routine about that actually is a good pick-me-up for me, is the 5-hour energy shot.
That really works?
I find it works. But as Jerry said, why 5 hours?
Yeah, you got to work an 8 hour day.
5 hours of energy? You need an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 or 8 hours. Who needs 5 hours? If they told me it was a 5-hour energy shot and I drank it and it was grape juice, would I go, all right, ready to go?
That is because today's episode is about the power of nothing.
Right.
Placebo effect, which basically started, I should mention, that it's being recognized as powerful enough that the American Medical Association considers it ethical to use placebos to enhance healing on their own. We had joked in a previous episode way back that we're going to a placebo store. Why spend money on drugs? Even generic drugs are too much. Yeah. Buy the placebo. Buy the placebo. And then we figured we wanted to find, but I couldn't. Of course you couldn't. Find the guy like Hal, who's been in 19 tests for stuff that he's had.
And always gets the placebo.
Every time. For every illness he has, he's in the placebo. But I was trying to find something.
Toenail fungus, always the placebo.
I was trying to find something to denote how powerful this can be. So a 26-year-old man was taken to an emergency room. After arguing with his girlfriend, he attempted suicide by swallowing 29 capsules of an experimental drug that he obtained from a clinical trial that he was testing on antidepressants. When he arrived at the hospital, he was sluggish, shaking, sweating, had rapid breathing. His blood pressure was extremely low, 80/40, and his pulse was 110. Doctors were finally successful at raising his blood pressure. Over the course of 4 hours, they injected him with 6 liters of saline solution. His blood pressure increased to 100/62, which is at the lower end of the normal range, but his pulse remained high at 106. What finally cured the patient wasn't anything the hospital emergency room staff did. Instead, a doctor from the clinical trial arrived at the hospital. He told the patient that those antidepressant pills weren't antidepressants because he had been randomized into the control arm of the trial. He had overdosed on placebos. Within 15 minutes, the patient's blood pressure stabilized at 126/80, and his heart rate dropped to a perfectly normal 80 beats per minute, which shows you the power of thinking you've taken something, that it can actually physically manifest itself over an overdose of placebo.
Really? No, really? Really? No, really? Really?
So we went out and found a placebo expert.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we do that?
Why wouldn't we?
What could
the
stop
question
us?
is, why would they agree to come on our show?
Hey, we ask that every episode.
I know. We have with us today Dr. Luana Colloca, is an Empower Distinguished Professor at the University of Maryland and the director of the Placebo Beyond Opinions Center, which I need to find out more about. It's an NIH-funded, internationally recognized expert. Dr. Colloca and her team research human pain modulation in patients suffering from chronic pain, hoping to deepen understanding of placebo and nocebo effects, which is what we've been talking about. She has an MD, a PhD in neuroscience, a master's degree in neuroethics.
Oh my gosh.
She's done postdoctoral training at the Brain Imaging Center in Stockholm, Sweden, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to Really Know Really, Dr. Luana Colloca. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
I wanted to just alert you to the fact that I just told a story that I picked that I thought was one of the better examples of the guy who overdosed on placebo, went to the hospital, and because he took all the antidepressants and his blood pressure, everything responded as if he had overdosed until the doctor said you were in the placebo group. And then within 15 minutes it adjusted, and that kind of is the most dumbed down way, easiest way to show the power of the brain, that the brain believes something, it can actually create physiological response to something that's not happening, which is insane.
Yes, the brain is very powerful and still, one of the organ will know less. So we truly are excited to use placebo also as a tool to understand how the brain can influence body responses.
Was there a particular bit of research or an event that, because you really, this is like part of your full-time work and research, was there something that just made you go, ooh, I just want to know more about this placebo thing?
Actually, there is. So I was a fresh PhD student, and I had finished my medical degree since a few months. And I started studying placebo effects in the intraoperative room with Parkinson patient receiving a very complex surgical procedure that we call deep brain stimulation. And I was very skeptical. Like, I even told my mentor, I want to do science that really matters. And I didn't feel like placebo was exactly that kind of science until I was in the intraoperative room. There was the surgeon, myself as neurophysiologist, the patient, of course, and we started recording neurons from a patient with only local anesthesia. So he was collaborating with us and so on. And then we gave a placebo that was a subcutaneous injection of a fake dose of dopamine. Actually, it was just a saline solution. And we started recording, and the spike of the neurons decreased as if we had given the active treatment. And for me, I can still, hear the spike of the neurons that change in those people who responded to placebo as if they had apomorphine.
Which is shocking. It's shocking.
Yes.
My mom had Parkinson's, and what happens is a part of the brain dies, the substantia nigra in the front, and it doesn't produce dopamine. It's very hard to get dopamine past the blood-brain barrier because it wants it out. But so you're saying instead of dopamine, you gave it fake dopamine, and the brain responded either because it was responding to the delivery system, just like a pill. I mean, I've read some of your research. You give people pills, and the brain responds because it's taking a pill. After a while, I know that you remove dosage down. You dose down people and then give them a pill. And the body's so used to taking a pill that it responds even if the pill is not the pill that's delivering what it's supposed to be delivering.
Exactly. So the experiment was an injection in the forearm of saline solution given after 3 administrations of apomorphine that occurred before the surgery. So once we administer saline solution under the impression that was apomorphine, the patient felt better. They say, oh, I feel better. My tremor disappear. A neurologist entered into the room to assess the rigidity and was also decreased. The most important for me as neurophysiologist, I was on the left side with all the equipment, see the spike of the neurons, and the spike become slower and as if we had given the active treatment.
So it wasn't just the patient's experience. You could actually see that the body was responding neurologically as if it had received the real thing.
I love that you say that, because as a neuroscientist, I wanted that objective measurement, something changing in the brain.
Yeah.
For me, as much as physician, the opinion of a patient, the release of symptoms, I want something true,
Yeah.
So objective. And that objective sign was the reduction of the spike and the neuronal activity as if the patient had received an active treatment. So for me, when we combine all the results, the clinical evidence, the subjective evidence, and the objective evidence, for me, the objective evidence was
real.
So you mentioned something in that example that I want to ask about, and that was that patient had experienced true morphine prior to that. So years ago, I started getting kidney stones, and the first time I got one, I was on a set, and I was being treated with Vicodin. It wasn't working, and eventually I was rushed to the hospital. Now, I have never in my life prior to this moment had morphine, but Vicodin wasn't helping. Nothing was helping this pain. All of a sudden, they gave me morphine, and instantaneously, my pain disappeared. My question to you is, if they had just told me I was getting morphine, would I have had the pain reduction, even though I don't know what morphine feels like?
Depends. Some patients respond very well, even if they never had experience, such an analgesic effect. Some other patients may not. But the placebo research started with Beecher, that was an anesthesiologist working with soldiers in Sicily during the Second World War. And actually, he ran out of morphine. And he told soldiers, this is morphine, your pain will be released. And he observed that some patients were able to manage their pain, do not feel pain. So mostly that clinical observation that is very similar to your experience drove the curiosity why these people feel better when in reality I'm giving them a placebo saline solution. So he came back to Harvard with this open question, how does happen? And he published something that is one of the pioneering articles where he started thinking that something in the brain is being released when we expect to feel better. And that expectation can trigger the endogenous opioid system. However, some patients do not do that. And that is one of the main line of research in my lab currently. We are interested to know who are these lucky one and those people a little bit less equipped.
Yeah.
And we can call them vulnerable because somehow this activation. But having not experienced that is not an issue. Even patients who are naive to opioids may still produce a very strong
Response.
opioid-like response.
Well, you did the thing that was fascinating to me, among other things, is how suggestible the brain is. Where I know you did the pain experiment, where you would show a red light when you hit people with a certain voltage, and a green light when it was low. And after a while, you started messing with it and doing the high voltage, but showing them green, and they didn't feel the pain that they had registered that they felt when it was a red light. So the mind was told to associate low with green, and it adjusted. Did that do it with all patients, or just a majority of patients, or a small percentage?
We do have a number. We observe 55% of people responding to that. That is a huge number. We don't even get this proportion of responder when we run a trial for pharmacological treatment for pain. So
Jeez.
55 is a very large proportion, and it may explain why many trials for pain, chronic acute pain, fail, because the placebo response is so relevant that somehow creating what we would call selling effects. It masks the effects of the active treatment.
So how often, I was wondering if that's the case. We did a show ages ago. What was the subject of the show? We were joking about the placebo effect. Was it drugs? I don't remember the topic of the show, but we joked about why take the real drug? Why even take a generic? We're selling you the placebo. The placebo, if erectile dysfunction placebo. If the results are so good, do doctors ethically, can they A, prescribe a placebo, and B, do they have to tell the patient and reveal that it's a placebo?
Maybe that you mentioned that. We call this open label placebo. Telling patient, we give you placebo. These are based on microcellulose or even empty capsules. There is nothing inside. Whether our brain can respond because merely taking a drug trigger a response, or we create some expectation or conditioning effects. So we call this open label placebo, and over the last 5-7 years, several labs have published that giving placebo and telling patients that they are taking a placebo improve different kind of pain disorders, low back pain, osteoarthritis, dysmenorrhea, irritable bowel syndrome related pain. And I resisted to that idea. I was thinking, come on, do we truly need to give sugar pills and tell patients you are receiving a placebo? And fair enough, after the pandemic, when we restart our laboratory activity, we had the patient responding to this red-green paradigm that you beautifully mentioned. And we felt bad to let them go home without anything. So what we started doing was telling the patient, look, that is how you respond. in the scan while we were running this brain imaging experiment, and we offer you the possibility to continue to benefit in another way. The only way we have to give you placebo. And you understand these are placebo that you will bring home and you will take for 45 days. So we start doing that, and the results are amazing. Their clinical pain decrease when they receive a open label placebo.
What
And
is it?
we
So
enroll
what?
the control groups. We had the people without anything, people who have been delayed. So even Luana, with her skeptical mind, I was really resisting to the open label placebo research. These results made me think like there is something here that we needed to understand from a mechanistic point of view with objective measurement to try to understand why sending home people with a bottle of placebos and they understood, they verbalize, I get it, they still respond.
That
That
It's not
is,
one day, it's
Yeah,
not a one
no.
it's
So you're sending them home with
astonishing.
45 days of sugar pills, and their pain is still gone, even though they know that it's sugar pills. Is there a guess? Is it the attention they're getting? Is it the treatment that they're getting? It doesn't.
Well,
I mean,
the
it's
story
not
is a little
rational.
more complex. We also we had several control groups. So we are diving into the mechanism, but these effects continue even after the 45 days as compared to other people who didn't receive a placebo. And still they receive the attention because we were monitoring
Right.
people without, we call no OLP, without any placebo. So the people that receive all our monitoring daily, the information, the interaction with my team, they didn't improve. So there must be something in the action of choosing to take a placebo that trigger probably again this endogenous mechanism of healing.
Jeez.
Doctor, has anyone tried, or do you speculate that this could work the other way? So, for instance, if you have a patient who is now addicted to an opioid, has anyone tried a placebo opioid to sort of get them off opioids, where their mind is thinking, well, I'm still getting this thing that makes me feel good, but in fact they are not?
This is brilliant, and it should be the next line of research to try to use placebo to taper the opioids or help those people who somehow have difficulty to, lower the dose of opioids.
Yeah.
As of today, we don't have any trial being done with open label placebo to taper placebo. We mentioned that theoretically. We also somehow at some point started to write grants on that. And it is still an open question. And I mean, I could say we have a trial now, but it's going quite slow. So it is difficult to people to accept. I mean, with chronic pain patient without, use of opioids, somehow it is easier to get them enrolled in the trial. The challenge has been, and I hope this podcast will help to be contacted from many patients who use opioids to manage their pain. The challenge is to enroll patients who use opioids. And that has been the difficulty so far.
Right.
Yeah.
But we do want to do that. We do hope to enroll patients to work with us, because this is literally an alliance, a partnership where we want to see how the brain can play a role in helping managing even situations that are very difficult, because it is difficult to taper opioids. It is difficult for patients, for their families, and ultimately for the providers,
Yeah.
But again, getting somebody in that's going to come off, potentially, you're going to be in the placebo group and we're taking you off drugs, must be a fraught. The other thought is the type of illnesses, you mentioned IBS, et cetera. Are those only the illnesses that come at the intersection where the brain controls the physical, where if the brain is not putting out an endorphin or whatever it is, you can't, it's liver disease, other stuff maybe not in the bailiwick of placebo, where it's not going to have an effect?
So the challenge and actually the excitement is to understand which symptoms and eventually disease may respond to this sort of inner pharmacy. My experience in research has shown that whatever we can experience tangibly can be modulated. So, but we need a brain that is there functioning. Patient in coma may not respond to placebo. Or, for example, if I tell a patient your level of cortisol is going to decrease by taking this pill, well, none of us, we may agree on this call, as an experience of reduction of cortisol. We know what is a reduction of anxiety, a reduction of stress, but not eventually a reduction of, cortisol level or any other parameter in the body, or, for example, an infection. We know the symptoms that the infection, but we don't know how many bacteria are running in our, urine, right? We may know only if we have a symptom that can be burning, pain, sensation. So unless we have the experience of a symptom,
Then you can't, got it.
we don't see a placebo response.
Right.
Does this have to do also, because again, there's the NOHO effect, which is if you're negative and you believe it's not going to work, and they associated it in stuff I read to prepare for this with gluten-free, that some people may not be allergic to gluten, but they believe they are, so they respond that way. Does this have to do with a level of, there are different levels of positiveness in people, and dourness, and sadness, and depression, that other people are more apt because they're more positive, they're more hopeful. That a placebo works in a more hopeful person than it does in a negative person who's hopeful that the placebo will work. Does that make any kind of sense as far as their personality?
Absolutely. We try always to understand the thinking positive, being open to experience, having this ability to get rewarded by risks or other things can facilitate placebo effects. And what we consistently see is that there isn't really a psychological trait or factor or personality that somehow amplify the placebo response. However, I have to say that those people who tend to be distressed, fearful, or with neuroticism, without hope, tend to have lower expectations of benefit, and this is consistent. And often they also have lower placebo effects.
To that regard, are placebo effects more effective with children because children are more open to imagination and suggestion generally?
There is little in science about placebo effects in children, but this little evidence seems to prove that the younger we are, the better we respond to placebo. And children with magic thoughts, or adults with higher traits for suggestibility, tend to respond to placebo better. What is interesting, when we get older, somehow this ability to respond to placebo, probably through different mechanisms, become again, somehow evident. So what is interesting is that placebo somehow work even in people without any hope. We see people that we ask, how much do you wish to improve? I said, well, I try everything. I have zero hope. There is nothing that can help me. Well, when we do this red-green exposure to reduction of pain, we can observe placebo effects even in hopeless people who don't believe, people who don't have any more desire, a drive to improve.
Yeah.
And that somehow can be so interesting because through conditioning and learning mechanism, we can have placebo responses without any hope.
Are doctors right now writing prescriptions for placebos for people?
No, I don't think so.
Not yet.
So I can't go to the CVS yet and
And
go
get my placebo.
placebos.
I'm
Well,
getting a
you
generic
can go
placebo.
to Amazon and buy some placebo, but the system yet doesn't allow to prescribe adjunct placebo. That means on top of the therapy. Some of my colleagues hope that that will be the next step, that those people who are, policymakers, based on the evidence, eventually can add this to the arsenal in medicine.
Yeah.
At least in the States, we're not there. You can't prescribe a bottle of placebos.
In your research, to your understanding, are the sort of alternative therapies, things like acupuncture, acupressure, Reiki, that kind of thing, that people claim are very efficacious for them? Would you be more inclined to believe that they are getting a placebo effect, or is there true evidence that, for instance, Reiki, which I've done once or twice, and I will be the first to admit I didn't have much of an experience, but for people that don't know, Reiki is a changing of a body's energy that a practitioner does by there's no actual contact. Hands are held above the body, and I don't know what the technique is, because when you're having it done to you, it's kind of like being on a massage table and you just kind of zone out. But the little I know of it makes it feel a little, esoteric to me. But some people have very profound reactions to it. If you had to guess, have you come across research that says these things are
Placebo.
in and of themselves effective, or would you surmise that it's more a placebo effect?
Any treatment that we study or we use have a placebo component. Even opioids, they have a strong placebo component. And the less a treatment has a pharmacodynamic component, so there is something there working because of a mechanism, the higher the placebo component. So, and in particular, the treatment you mentioned occur in a ritual. There is this ritual around the patient that we usually don't observe when we receive a prescription of painkillers or antidepressants, where they just send us home with a prescription. The fact that some non-pharmacological treatment have this very sophisticated interaction with the provider, starting with the medical history, listening to the patient, touching or sort of, keeping the hands close by. All these elements tend to somehow activate the mechanism underlying placebo effects and modulation of a symptom. So these treatments that are still important, because non-pharmacological treatments should be part of the pain management and other symptom management. The placebo component in that case can be very prevalent, much larger than a pharmacological effective treatment. And that helps to, mediate or sometimes create the response.
Well, how close are we to getting a handle on using it, as Jason said before, for drug management, for IBS management? Is it in the near future? Are we close to identifying and being able to regulate, just like you dose medicine, where you could prescribe to a person who it's going to work for, how it's going to work, and then modulate them down from drugs, et cetera? Is that years away? Is it a year away? Or what do you sense from your research?
Well, placebo research is very translational. We do all this research primarily in humans, in patients, and that helps because we are gathering evidence and information that help medicine to somehow understand the mechanism related to placebo effects. In that sense, I'm quite optimistic that this can translate into medicine in the near future. And the more we raise awareness, like today we are doing together, right, the better. Because we are talking about a neurobiological mechanism. We are talking about something that if we intentionally exploit can help medicine to serve patient needs in a more effective way.
There is something that I have done for years that I discovered I could do. And it has been very helpful to me. So I don't get migraines, but like anybody, I get a headache now and then. And there are times when I am not near, if I take a pain reliever, it's great. It knocks my headache out. But there are times when I don't have it nearby. So I have been able to mentally change the sensation of pain to a sensation of pressure. And when it's pressure, it doesn't
And
have
what do you
that
do?
sort
How
of
do you do that?
I just say to myself, okay, where does it hurt? Okay, it hurts right there. So don't think of it as like this throbbing, radiating thing that's irritating your nerves. Think of it as literally someone is pushing from the inside, like a massage from the inside. It's just pushing on that spot. And what you're feeling is the tenderness of the spot. And by doing that, emotionally, I don't go, oh, something's, it's like when you feel pain, you feel like your nervous system is being attacked.
Right.
When you feel, if I pinch you, you'll have one response. But if I put pressure on something, even if it hurts, you have a different reaction.
And how does that help you short-term and long-term?
Sometimes it can actually take the headache away. What it can certainly do is keep me at a place where I'm very comfortable until I can get to a place where I can lie down on a massage ball or get to a pain reliever.
And what we talked about in the beginning is you actually see the neurons, you actually see the changes from something that you're not giving them, which is pretty stunning.
The experience you share is so important because first the pain is a signal to defend us, but eventually in chronic pain patients or those who have even acute pain, this signal can be amplified by the level of attention we pay.
Right.
So first, when you describe the lack of ability to have the drug, this explain now the logos of control. You want to be in control. So you eventually have to assign this beginning control to the action of taking the painkiller or within yourself. You were able to, somehow quite calm the signal naturally by say, okay, in 1 hour I will be home, I can lie down and I feel better. And many times we take a painkiller immediately because we want somehow this feeling of pain reduction. And the response also can occur quite fast, even before, we metabolized that medication, right, telling us how the placebo component is powerful, because this immediate pain reduction can't occur by virtue of taking that pill, because by, taking the pill, we need a few minutes, 10, 15 minutes before the pill can be metabolized and reach our, bloodstream and eventually producing the analgesic effect.
Right.
Many times we experience analgesia immediately after taking a pill. That is already the placebo component. Also, it is interesting that we panic when we don't have access to a painkiller. I used also to have this frequent headache, and I realized that as long as I had my painkiller, the one that was working for me, in my bag with me, sometimes I didn't need to use, but I had to have with me. If I didn't have with me, this intolerable, excruciating pain that becomes so relevant. Eventually, I become very good in managing this sensation, and often now I don't take at all because I know that eventually I can go with the flow and continue my daily activity and then rest when it's time to rest. Unfortunately, for many patients, this sort of ability to tackle the inner, mechanism of descending modulation of the pain become very unusual or difficult because they never tried or they never were told of. And so the action often is taking a pill immediately.
Right.
And then if the first doesn't work, taking 2 or 3 or 4, and then escalating to the next more powerful pain medication. That mechanism can create, this sort of need of escalating and multi-therapy and so on. That is why I still believe that even treatment that may work by virtue of a placebo mechanism are so important as long as they empower patient to be able to harness what I love to call inner pharmacy. We all have that.
Or inner pharmacy. Yeah, there you go.
My last question, because you're going to all judge me. I don't want to be
judge you
judged.
anyway, but go ahead.
I don't want to be judged. So we've been talking about placebos primarily for pain management. For a patient that would have to take Viagra, if you give them a placebo Viagra, do they get the desired effect?
Probably. I bet they will.
I mean, has anyone, to your knowledge, has anyone done research on that? Because I also think sexual dysfunction has a large psychological component to it. And I would imagine that once you feel, oh, my body is not doing what I need it to do, but if I take this magical little pill, it suddenly will, no matter what mood I'm in or what else is impacting me, this magic pill is going to solve my problem. I have to assume a large part of that result is psychological.
Absolutely. There are studies show that side effects of treatment for prostate cancer that actually, the leaflet, the physician describe you will have a reduction of libido and sexual dysfunction. So those patients who are alert about the side effects of cancer-related therapies tend to experience larger amount of side effects, sexual dysfunction, compared to those patients who were told in a different way or even not told about the side effects related to sexual functions.
Yeah.
So definitely the mind is somehow influencing both the positive and negative way. And the nocebo, the bad twin of a placebo, works in a more, effective way. I mean, when we need if someone tells us you will experience the side effects, this will become self-prophecy almost all the time.
Right.
Well, you know what? The phrase belief.
By the way, that's why I asked, because I didn't want you to worry anymore.
No, I figure it's a scream
you
for
can
help.
Take,
I get it.
You
I
can
get
take
it.
a placebo,
I get it.
and you'll
It's a
be fine.
It's a scream for help.
Everything in your home will be fine.
It's a scream for help. You'll be okay.
No, okay. If you want to believe that, that's fine. I was just trying to take care of you.
touching me.
That's why I said a friend of mine. I think I put it in the abstract.
Yeah, you deferred, but we feel bad for you.
Yeah, okay.
Belief is the oldest medicine known to man. So thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. And work faster and harder, would you please?
Or at least believe you are.
Believe you are. Yes, we believe you are, and that will help Jason
Immensely.
Tonight,
Immensely.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Dr. Colloca.
Really
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
your work. Thank you. Take care. You may need 2 placebos for the for little
How
Jay.
dare you?
Little Jay.
Why can't I ask
Jay Jr.
something? Why
No, I
can't
thought it was very sweet.
Can I not be speculative?
It's
Why do you
very- you know what?
immediately
What's
assume? I knew the minute I started talking about sexual dysfunction, you were going to make
you
assumptions.
not? Excuse me.
And when you assume,
Would you? Yeah, you're pretty right. You're right based on a placebo. 50% of the time, you would have done the same to me. It's really interesting how powerful the mind can be and what it can do.
You're
internally.
absolutely right. There was that whole thing I was sharing with the doctor about that notion of turning pain to pressure for me came from when I watched an old Star Trek episode. And there was a Star Trek episode where they get sucked into this galaxy and they are back in the Old West. They're actually at the OK Corral, and they're going to be replaying this moment in history where they're going to be in the gunfight. And what Spock realizes is the whole thing, everything, though it feels real and tangible to their senses, all of it's an illusion. And he says, when you know that, the illusion is ineffective. So if you know that the bullets are not real when they get fired at you, they won't hurt you. And the humans are going, well, that's great for you with your Vulcan brain. You can do that. But if we have even a shadow of a doubt, we're dead. And so he does the Vulcan mind meld on them to convince them.
They're
But I
wait,
thought-
how does it end?
They
have to reload fake bullets, so they go reload.
No, of course the bullets don't hurt them, and the aliens go, oh, You're fascinating.
You know, it's a
creatures.
shame. I love that you bring up Star Trek, and every time you bring up Star Trek, I'll say, why do they have to go to the transporter room? Anyway, I just have to get that out of my system.
So that got me to, this
Pain
idea.
thing.
And then the other thing that was true for me is years ago, I used to have a kind of a bad sciatic thing. I'd tweak my back all the time. And we were in Vegas. This happened when you and I were in Vegas, and we were doing the Donnie Clay show. And my back was bad, and then you're in Vegas, and you're keeping weird hours, and you're not sleeping in your own bed. And I get up one morning, and my already bad back tweaks again. And a friend of mine had given me this book called Healing the Back by Dr. John Sarno. Now, John Sarno is a back surgeon.
Oh, this is the guy that Howard talked about, Howard Stern, and all that. Been around for a while.
And, he's a back surgeon, so
Right.
he knows that there are mechanical reasons why people have back pain and back failure. But he also had done a lot of research about patients that were stressed, patients that were exhausted, patients that, where a lot of this pain could be psychosomatic or self-inflicted. And I was reading the book, and my friend who gave it to me said, just read the book. I said, I don't have time to do a program. She said, no program, read the book. I said, what do you mean read the book? I'm going to have to do a thing. There's exercises. She said, just read the book. So I had read, when this thing happened, I had read only about 5 chapters, but I understood the gist of it, which was, there's a psychosomatic component. And I got up that morning, I retweaked my back, and in the room I yelled out, all right, I get it. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed. I'm this, I'm that. Pick something else. Pick something else other than the back pain. By that night, the back pain was gone, and I have never tweaked my back again. And that was how many years ago we were doing that?
A long time
15,
ago. And I've heard,
18?
I heard Howard talk about, other people talk about the book.
Unbelievable.
Did they have a Cliff Notes version?
Well, I just gave it to you.
Not from the readers.
But it's that a lot of people experiencing true pain, real pain, debilitating pain in their back, were having it exacerbated by the fact that they were holding on to stress, they were holding on to exhaustion.
Which is really dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
And once you let it go, decide to let it go. Look, I believe that's why we had her on. It's fascinating to me, the advancements we're going to make. And again, the accidental stuff of the diet thing. I mean, in physiology, which I did for a short time and realized I was out of my league in college because my mom had Parkinson's. They've been trying to find that area of the brain for satiation forever because everybody knew we'll make $1 gazillion. If we can get people to feel they're full, and here it is. All of these drugs are out now. They don't know where it's going to end. We don't know how long they have to take it. We don't know the repercussions. But somehow it's alerting a part of the brain. So if you could stimulate that part of the brain yourself without having to take that drug.
Well, here's things that if we could do that, there's a whole area of things that I've thought about where they could be placebo-y things and we'd still have like imagine a placebo vacation. Not an actual vacation.
You have to go.
But you think you're on vacation. Imagine placebo foods. You're eating a salad, but you placeboing.
It's a steak.
It's a steak. Imagine a different career. You're digging a ditch, but
you
you're
know what?
imagining that,
I'm on Seinfeld.
Sexual partners.
That happens
I'll
all
leave
the
it
time.
at that. David, in your imagination, how are you feeling, sir?
And what do you believe?
Imagination, I feel great, but did you? I want to know. Did you tell the end of that Vegas backstory? Because you were saying pick something else. Or was that just went to the Viagra question?
No, it actually what happened, is by the end of that day, that chronic back pain that I had been having for weeks was gone. I mean, was so gone to the point that it was not an issue for me. It wasn't inhibiting anything. And over the next few days, it was completely gone. And I've never tweaked my back again.
Is he still around that author? Because for a while, his name was out there.
I know the book is still very much available. Healing the Back, Dr. John Sarno. But it was remarkable. And it really, I think it was this sort of violent expulsion of emotion where I went, I get it.
And by the way, you realize we're kidding and joking, but when you say a placebo vacation, you know what that is. That's meditation.
Yes.
It's taking you to a different place. So, and that's only been around.
Or as some people call it, a staycation, where you suddenly look at the place you are in a different way and take it in for its beauty, take it in for what's positive and wonderful about it, rather than going, it's the rut of, it's the same,
I believe that. Well, David, what do we have?
Or virtual reality. No mistakes today. You guys were really hitting it out of the park. But the thing that occurred to me was that a placebo, of course, is anything that seems to be a real medical treatment that isn't. I thought that I'd sort of look for a few of those things that most of us consider to be facts, but are in fact not true.
Okay, all right.
Such as, I don't know. How about bagpipes? Where were bagpipes invented?
Not in Ireland, not in Scotland.
Trenton, New
Not in
Jersey.
Scotland.
Trenton, New Jersey.
No,
I don't know.
I think they were probably, if I had to guess, I would say it was someplace like a Turkey or, something like
Yes.
And what I'm fascinated
that. Was it Turkey?
Ancient Turkey and Egypt have found. In fact, they were made from dog skin and bones. So
Why, that I did not know.
By the way, can you imagine who's the first guy to sit around and go, I bet if we blow into that dog, we can get a high G. I mean, seriously, you always want to reverse engineer.
Yeah, put a little hole in each paw. We'll get 4 notes.
Hal, you got to get busy.
really? Yeah.
He said, hey,
Yeah.
Ma, Hal's still talking about putting air in the dog. So, yeah, all right.
Ancient Egyptian Hal.
Wow.
That's an interesting.
And what was the first tune they played?
And who said, "Boy, we've done a great job inventing that"?
Hey, your
that
dog's
instrument.
flat.
Really
your
knocked it
dog's a
out
little
of the park.
flat.
Yeah, tune it up.
We all tune up, everybody. All right.
Napoleon, not short.
Not short?
No, it's like 5'7", 5'8", well, right?
5'7".
Yeah, 5'7".
There was a
Wait, 5'7" is not short?
No, but they picture him as
It's
4
not
foot,
short.
like Billy Barty. They think like that he's this really small person.
No, I need
He's
to go
not
back
that
a
small.
step. 5'7" is not short?
Well,
Because I'm very not short adjacent, if that's...
you're not that short.
I'm 5'5".
Well, that's short.
well, the
You know, when you go to the amusement park, if you can't go in the tilt-a-whirl...
I can't. I can't ride the
the thing.
Yeah.
No, the rumor, the myth is that he was 5'2". But apparently back then there was something called French inches, which were a different measurement.
We're all aware. We're all
French
aware.
inches.
Yeah.
Was he,
Yes,
was
he
he,
did.
That's
went
where the
How was his manhood?
Viagra.
his manhood French inches?
Two more quick ones. Drinking milk does not produce mucus. So if you're sick and you're mucousy and stuff like that, you could drink
Come
milk.
on.
Not gonna,
Dairy
nothing.
products don't produce.
You know what? Generations of Tildens are not wrong with that. I'm sorry. I cannot alter my belief system there.
All right.
Mere scientific
last
studies
one-
aren't going to alter
And
me.
the last one that got me was, it's quite likely that Vincent van Gogh did not cut off his own ear.
Who cut it off?
Well, they think that it was Paul Gauguin who came at him with a rapier of some kind, and they came up with this story when the authorities showed up, and Van Gogh didn't want Gauguin to be arrested.
Can I
how
just say
sweet,
that
how
would
sweet.
be an incredibly dexterous lunge to come at a guy and, that's like a surgical strike to lop off an ear.
Well, we don't know. We don't know how.
I don't think the whole thing was lopped off.
Also-
I think,
No, the whole thing was not lopped off. And as a matter of fact, I saw a huge, this will tell you what I do in my spare time. There was a huge documentary on Van Gogh about the controversy of the ear.
Of the ear.
They have presented what seemed to be ample proof that it was self-inflicted, but that what he did is he didn't take the whole ear. It was kind of on a diagonal, and he left sort of the top ridge
and
got the
based on this, what was the reason that he did it?
He was madly in love with this prostitute that he was seeing, and she was not leaving her life to make her way
You
with
don't
him.
leave with me. I'm cutting my ear
And
off.
he was clinically depressed, and then that was the capper, and so he, as a gesture of
He's dying love, undying love.
or despair,
Did it
undying
work?
despair. Did it turn the prostitute around? No, I think she went.
You're crazy.
Somebody call the gendarmes.
Did they say? I'm curious. Did they save the ear to try to reattach it, or I don't know?
No, but there was, I believe, I'm remembering this very sporadically. I think they made a death mask of Van Gogh, and that's how they know
Knew
that there
that
was
it- wow.
part of his ear was still there. So.
Because all the pictures of him with the thing, the rag,
Wrapped.
rag,
Yeah, well, he
dirty
painted
rag,
it.
dirty,
Not pictures.
dirty. I mean,
He
painting,
painted
but dirty
himself.
rag. You wrap, you put
Yeah,
something,
schmata.
you put something clean on.
Yeah.
They didn't know that back then. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
They didn't know from
Well,
cleaning.
David, thank you very much. Fascinating.
You're very welcome.
I think also
The amazing thing was he took a placebo for the pain of the ear.
and was still screaming
And
like,
was still
like a
yeah,
banshee.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was actually the model for Munch's The Scream.
because of placebo and the first experiment in placebo failure.
Right.
So there you go.
Exactly. No
Well,
SIBO.
thank you, David. Very good. And she was fascinating.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
I hope she's doing her work
Dr.
so we can
Luana
get
Colloca?
placebos sooner rather than later. And one last thing I want to tell, because do you have asthma?
I do, and she's absolutely right. If I leave I never have an asthma problem. If I leave the house without the inhaler, I'm like,
So in 2011, one group received an inhaler with albuterol.
yeah.
Another group got an inhaler with a placebo. Third group got a sham acupuncture. The fourth got nothing. The study authors evaluated lung function on two metrics, self-report from the patients on the asthma symptoms.
Yep.
If you go by self-report, it looks like the placebo, albuterol, and the sham acupuncture are all equally effective. Is
Absolutely
that amazing?
correct. I know from when I have had, I know I don't get asthma attacks, but there are times when I go, oof, that feels tight. And if you start to panic,
It makes it worse.
it makes it worse. And if you go, all right, so stretch, open it up, take a couple deep breaths, and you go.
It's amazing with all the research. We still don't know a lot about the human body, what it can and can't do.
Yes.
Especially
I know
yours.
a little more about yours.
All right, thanks for being with
And
us.
I need a pill to forget
We'll
what
see
I
you
now
next time.
know.
Producer Laurie, thanks for even hanging and not walking out on us. We
Yeah.
really appreciate that. And for producing this, David, thank you. But most importantly, thank you for watching, listening, and contributing. I made the contributing part up. I don't know what they contribute.
You need a placebo for
They contribute.
sincerity.
We wouldn't.